After the 2025 Dutch Grand Prix, Oscar Piastri was leading the World Championship. He was 34 points ahead of Lando. Right now, after the 2025 Brazilian Grand Prix, Lando Norris is leading Oscar Piastri by 24 points. And there are three reasons, there are three weaknesses that Piastri has that Lando managed to capitalize on in the number of Grand Prix that happened between Netherlands and Sao Paulo. The first one is Lando's qualifying pace. And in the initial phases of the season, Oscar Piastri looked like he was matching Lando in quali pace. Although, if you look at it in one lap pace, Lando seemed to have a slightly better advantage, especially in like mathematical tracks where drivers don't have that much of creative freedom to find the racing line. You have to kind of like take whatever racing line is ideal, kind of like Monaco, there's only one racing line. Earlier, Oscar Piastri had the advantage earlier in the season, and then as the season has progressed, when it comes to one lap pace rapidly, especially if you look at the like recent run of races, Lando has put himself ahead. The second reason is race pace, overall race pace, and this is something that Lando had an advantage throughout the entire season. In the initial part of the race, Lando would struggle a little bit to find his rhythm, but once he finds his rhythm, he he gets the most out of the stints in terms of pace, in terms of extending the stints, and he can follow the car ahead closely. He can be consistently quicker than his rivals without cooking the tires. And some of the best examples are from Hungary, Singapore, and the most recent race in Sao Paulo, Brazil. In the 2025 Hungarian Grand Prix, Charles Leclerc was on pole and he led into the first corner. After a few laps, Oscar Piastri dropped like 3.5 seconds behind him. This is where he kind of lost a little bit of ground to Lando Norris because Lando was on a one stop and Oscar Piastri was on a two stop. Had he pushed Leclerc a lot more than that, I think he would have cooked Leclerc's tire because Ferrari struggles with LICO and all those type of issues. And eventually, Ferrari did struggle from LICO and all those type of issues. Leclerc dropped to P4. But the thing is, in that Hungarian Grand Prix, in that initial stint, Oscar needed to push. Another example of that comes from the 2025 Singapore Grand Prix. Lando overtakes Oscar. It was a little bit sketchy. I mean, good racing, but from Papaya rule standard, it was a little bit sketchy. Now, I see that as the laps go by, Lando is consistently pulling ahead of Oscar Piastri. Like it was 4 or 5 seconds at one point. And then again, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, bro, if you think you have been overtaken in the wrong way, at least stay close to Lando and try to put an undercut on him. If you stay close to the car ahead in Singapore and put the pressure on them, force them to use their tires too much and, screw them in that regard, and you can undercut them, then it's going to work in a favor. In Singapore, the power of undercut is too much. But Oscar, his race pace was so less that he couldn't even manage to do it. And the same thing happened again in 2025 Brazilian Grand Prix. In the initial parts of the race, after the safety car restart, after Oscar Piastri and Kimi Antonelli had that collision, and then Charles Leclerc went off. After that moment, Oscar Piastri was P2. Yes, he had a 10-second penalty, but on track at the moment, he was P2. And again, here too, you can see Lando just eking the gap away, just continually pulling away. And the gap just steadily rose 1.5, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds. And I'm thinking again, Oscar, if you genuinely want to have a chance to fight for the win in the 2025 Brazilian Grand Prix, that you need. He needed that win. He DNF'd in the sprint race the day before. He had a 10-second penalty. He needed to do everything he can to stay in contention for the win. And he was just consistently dropping the pace back, consistently on the back foot, and he just couldn't keep up with Lando. Now, granted, now people will say that, Lando, had found the rhythm and all those type of things, and that's the whole point. So that was the second weakness of Oscar Piastri, that he had poor race pace. The third and the final reason why Oscar Piastri is losing his world championship to Lando Norris is his risk assessment abilities, right? So, in the recent races, more recently, Piastri is fancying a lot of collisions. Since Azerbaijan, it's very uncharacteristic of him. Azerbaijan weekend was kind of like the absolute low of the season for Oscar Piastri, if you think about it. But then even after that, like let's talk about Azerbaijan, right? He jumped the race start, which is completely his fault. He got too jittery, jumped the race start, big mistake. Then he dropped to the back of the grid because he jumped the race start. He went to anti-stall, shit happens. Then he gets too desperate. He tries to go around the outside of the Haas, or was it the Sauber of Nico Hulkenberg, and he while doing that, he shifted the brake balance to the front. Again, he did not need to take that much risk in initial part of the race where he has cold tires, but he was too desperate. He's like, you know what, I fucked up the race start. Now I'm very far behind. I need to make up ground quickly. Even though this is lap 1, I'm going to shift the brake balance to the front, even though the tires are cold and the brakes are cold. And eventually 4 corners after, in turn 5, he had that crash. 5 corners after. So that was Azerbaijan. He couldn't manage the risk properly. Then again, it happens in United States Sprint. In the United States Sprint, it looked like Verstappen will lead. It looked like Lando Norris has successfully protected his P2 position. There was a little bit of gap around the outside of Lando. Now, Oscar Piastri, instead of taking the risk around the outside or whatever it is, he made the immediate switch back to the inside. A lot of people are defending it. I am not defending it. The reason is you don't try that risky maneuver, immediate switchback maneuvers when there are like 17 other cars behind you. You don't do that. If it is only you and Lando fighting and there is not many cars, around, then of course go crazy. Do the switchback, go from side to side. Who gives a shit? Have a pirouette on your own. Who cares? But when it's the race start and the entire field is closed up, you don't do sudden switchback maneuvers. That's again another failure of Oscar Piastri in managing risks. And finally, the another recent mistake that I saw from Oscar Piastri was in the 2025 Brazilian Grand Prix sprint race. Now, in the Brazilian sprint, he had a DNF. And the reason why he had a DNF is because he dropped a wheel in the curb. The curbs were wet. They didn't have the grip. If it was sunny, if it was, the completely hot day, then obviously the curbs will have some form of grip. But obviously in Sao Paulo, it was a rainy weekend-ish type of thing, and it was cloudy. There were some showers in between. The track was slightly damp. And obviously, as a result of that, you can glean that the curbs were wet. Now, when that is the condition, you have to remain completely focused on the racetrack lap after lap. You have to consciously tell yourself that don't go outside the racing lines, even for half a second. Don't do that. Because if you do, then you will DNF because there is no grip on the curbs. And he lost that concentration. He lost that focus for 1 split second in that particular lap where he crashed. All the other drivers, they remained conscious. They remained focused. I mean, obviously, a bunch of other people crashed also. Nico Hulkenberg, he went off. Then Franco Colapinto went off. I'm not saying like everybody, but the experienced drivers, the drivers who are capable of winning world championships, Oliver Bearman, for example, those drivers, they just remained focused and constantly concentrated and told themselves that, you know what, if I become too greedy and try to put the wheel on the curb, trying to find some extra lap time, I am going to have a crash. I'm going to lose it because there's literally zero grip because the curbs are wet. Piastri forgot to tell himself that. And again, that's the difference between like a race-winning driver and a championship-winning driver right there. Now, obviously, the 3 things that I just mentioned, the qualifying pace, in which Lando seems to have advantage in this part of the season. Then you have to talk about the race pace, where Lando is perfectly managing to eke out maximum performance out of the stints and the tires, following the car forward closely so that he can make his undercut work, he can make one-stop strategies work, etc., etc. And the third reason is Oscar Piastri's inability to manage risks properly. He just gets too desperate and too greedy at times, and that comes to fuck him in the ass. Another thing that I want to say is kind of like a side note. I also think the McLaren pit wall sometimes doesn't give Oscar Piastri the best strategy. And it is true to some degree. I mean, in Brazilian Grand Prix, we saw, I think the strategy plan for Piastri wasn't that good. Not that he had the, fast paced anyway. If Verstappen is starting from the pit lane and is finishing in P3, then you with a 10-second penalty should be out there competing for the win. That's all I'm going to say. So Piastri's, it's not like Piastri's pace was phenomenal in the Brazilian Grand Prix, but still he was kind of slightly screwed over. I think they could have executed his strategy better. The same thing can be said about the 2025 Hungarian Grand Prix, where Lando was given the one stop. But then again, credit goes to Lando for making that work. So Oscar Piastri needs to go ahead and work on all the three things that we just discussed. And I don't think he will be able to work it out in this week break. Because after this week, we have the final triple header, and those races come fast. And these are the things that can only be fixed with time. The consistent qualifying pace, the maximization of the stint performance, and, properly reading the race and assessing the risks. All those things that come with experience. Lando certainly has it. So I guess we will see how Oscar Piastri adjusts. Even for Piastri standards, right now he needs a miracle to get back in the championship fight, because 24 points is a bit too much. It'll be wild if Lando Norris wins. All of the memers, trollers will have a bad day. I counted him out certainly from the World Championship based on how he was bottling things. But now I have to shut the fuck up and give him all the respect in the world that he truly deserves. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.